Hi, it's Katrina. The seven-headed deity. One of the great coincidences of the ancient world is a seven-headed deity, what you might call a hydra or a many-headed dragon, seemingly worshipped by various civilizations. From ancient Greeks to the Aztec, this seven-headed unknown being played a key part in religious worship. Menorah mentions a seven-headed hydra in the Bible, and a bizarre depiction of a seven-headed creature was even found in Russia, carved as an ancient petroglyph 5,000 years before today. But just what is this thing, and why were so many cultures fascinated by it? The truth is, we don't know. In Aztec lore, it is a fertility goddess named Chicomeocoatl, and she's described as a woman with 7 snake heads. In Mexico, archaeologists have found depictions of the goddess holding the sun as a shield. This shield looks identical to an object that also appears in a Russian petroglyph of another seven-headed creature. They're almost exactly the same, yet they were drawn thousands of years apart and on opposite ends of the earth. Next, we have to look at the goddess Manas from Hindu mythology. She is the goddess queen of snakes, also seen depicted with 7 snake heads sprouting from a glowing orb behind her head. Then there's the seven-headed deity called Mushman, worshipped by the Assyrians and the Sumerians. She also has 7 snake heads. And let's not forget the legendary Hydra from Greek mythology. The Greeks took it even further when they introduced Medusa. In the end, deities with 7 heads, usually snake heads, can be found all over the world. Different cultures, different places, and different times all have a similar mythical or godlike entity. The Inca-Egypt enigma. One of the greatest historical coincidences ever has to do with the Inca Empire and the ancient Egyptians. Even though there are thousands of miles between the two civilizations, they share a whole heap of similarities. Both cultures built pyramids aligned with the cardinal points of the universe. They both dressed their dead loved ones in brilliant pieces of jewelry, and they both used animals to symbolize all kinds of things in their societies, from power to death. And let's not forget mummies. Both the Egyptians and the Inca practiced mummification with a startling amount of obsession. They may have mummified their dead differently, but the very fact that both cultures came up with the idea to preserve dead bodies so that their souls could travel safely into the afterlife is a wild coincidence. It's true that the Inca practiced human sacrifice, and the Egyptians weren't quite so keen on that, but there are many similarities between these ancient people, including their main deity. In Egypt, the main god was named Ra, who symbolized the sun. In Peru, the Inca worshipped a deity called Inti, who also happened to be a personification of the sun. In fact, worshipping gods who were representations of the sun is a key factor of many ancient religions. Some people even say Jesus Christ is also a representation of the sun, with his death and resurrection being a clever way to describe the winter solstice. Of course, you can take similarities and coincidences quite far if you want to, so it is up for you to decide. What do you think about all this? Let me know in the comments below. Romulus and Moses. The story of Romulus and Remus, the alleged founders of Rome, shares some odd similarities with both the stories of Moses and the story of Osiris, the Egyptian god. The overarching theme surrounding all 4 of these ancient people is that they began their lives sent floating down a river as babies. All were sent away in the hopes of escaping one persecution or another, usually at the hands of a threatening male. To be quite honest, all these stories are almost exactly the same, from the foundations of ancient Rome to the religion of ancient Egypt and to the Bible. In the case of Romulus and Remus, the twin brothers were sent down the Tiber River in a basket by their mother, Princess Rhea, who wanted to keep them safe from the evil king Amulius. They were ultimately discovered by a female wolf, who then raised them as her own. In the case of Osiris, he is tricked into entering a floating vessel by his brother Seth, who then locks him inside and sends him floating down the River Nile. He is eventually found by the Queen of Egypt and saved. Then there is Moses, who was also sent down the River Nile in a basket by his mother to protect him from the pharaoh who's trying to kill all the male babies. This time it was the pharaoh's daughter who discovered Moses and raised him as her own. Nobody knows why all these stories are so similar, though chances are they each gained inspiration from the other over thousands of years. The Lady of Elche. The Lady of Elche is a mysterious artifact discovered back in 1897 on a private Spanish estate. To this day, nobody knows the exact origin of the artifact, with some saying she may have been an Iberian princess, a goddess, or just a simple statue. She is considered to be one of the most outstanding examples of sculpture artwork ever found from the ancient world. It was actually a young farmer who came across her while clearing an area on the farm for plants. But here's where things get a little strange. The statue of the Lady of Elche looks almost identical to Princess Leia from Star Wars. She has the exact same coils of hair and arguably a pretty similar face. But the coincidences go beyond science fiction. One of the main theories surrounding the Lady of Elche is that she was a representation of an Atlantean goddess. One of the reasons for this is that the statue is simply too well made to have been crafted in Spain during the pre-Christian era, according to some. The detail and curious headdress is just too intricate. Most archaeologists agree she was carved around the 4th century BC, and that at the time, she was decorated in vivid colors of red and blue. But it's the exquisite artwork that makes people think she may have been from Atlantis, since no other people of the time, at least none in Europe, could have crafted such a beautiful piece of artwork. Of course, this is not really giving much credit to the people of the ancient world, who I think were much more advanced than we give them credit for. Chinese mummies. I already told you about the similarities between the Inca and the Egyptians, but did you know that China also had quite a bit in common with Egypt? One of their biggest similarities was that they also turned their dead into mummies. Egyptians wrapped their dead pharaohs in cloth and covered them in gold and artwork, burying them deep in the ground in chambers, while the Chinese wrapped their dead in cloth as well, but covered them in suits of jade before laying them to rest deep in caves. The Chinese process involved encasing a member of royalty in over 200 plates of jade, weaving them together with silver threads. But Egypt and China have far more in common than just how they prepared their dead. Both cultures kept dogs as pets, they both cherished luxury items and had a fascination with oils and perfumes, and they both had cults to the dead. While the complex rituals and funerary customs weren't exactly the same, both cultures had a disturbing fascination with death and what came after, and invented rituals to make sense of the underworld. Which way do you prefer? Bandaged mummies and golden sarcophagi, or jade-plated mummies? Let me know in the comments below. It's shout-out time! Want to give a big thank you to Wakis Bashir and Tommy McKean. Thanks so much for your support. We wouldn't be here without you. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like these. Vikings in South America. We know today that the Vikings made it to North America before any other Europeans. They traveled to Greenland, where they set up settlements and lived for decades. They also made it to the tip of northeastern Canada, to the island of Newfoundland. Here, they set up the first permanent European settlement, known today as Lansau Meadows. They never spread through the rest of Canada, but they did make it here first. And, as if by coincidence, some experts say the Vikings even made it to South America before any other Europeans. The best evidence comes in the form of dog bones. French scientists Madeleine Friant and H. Reichlin investigated dogs that were mummified sometime before the Spanish conquest of South America. They were shocked to see that the dogs hadn't actually come from America, but rather from Denmark. They weren't descendants of wild Amazonian dogs, they were descendants of Danish sheepdogs. The suggestion here is that the Vikings arrived with their dogs a long time ago, then left some behind before they vanished. And here's another striking coincidence. At the archaeological site of San Agustin in Colombia, researchers found Viking runes carved on stone statues. Then again in Peru, runes were found on urns crafted by the Nazca people. These runes are identical to what the Vikings used at home, meaning they had likely stopped by in South America and interacted with the locals. Where they went after or how they even got there is a huge mystery. Historical synchronicity. There are some pretty strange historical coincidences from more modern times, such as the fact that Stephen Hawking was born on the 300th anniversary of the death of the great scientist Galileo Galilei, whose death occurred on Einstein's 139th birthday, March 14th, when the calendar reads 3.14, which equals pi. Coincidence? Or historical synchronicity? We can take it a step further even. The first king of Rome was Romulus, and the first emperor was Augustus. When the Roman Empire finally fell, The emperor who was watching it burn to the ground was named Romulus Augustus. That almost seems too absurd to be a coincidence. Fast forward a few thousand years, Thomas Jefferson died on the 50th anniversary of America's birthday, July 4th, and so too did John Adams. And yes, James Monroe also died on July 4th. All three of these men were the founding fathers of the country. Turn to the great Mongol Empire, we can see that Genghis Khan rampaged through much of Eurasia and killed heaps of people. His direct descendant was a guy named Amir Timur, who died in 1405. He ruled the Turco-Mongol dynasty. Way later, when archaeologists with the Soviet Union uncovered his tomb in 1941, there was an inscription that read, "Whoever opens my tomb shall unleash an invader more terrible than I." 2 days later, the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union. The point behind all of these historical coincidences? Well, there really isn't a point. It's impossible to say whether these things happened because of some divine synchronicity, some obscure mathematical probability, or for absolutely no reason at all. Ancient calendars. There are two ancient calendar systems that share so many similarities it seems almost impossible that they developed independently of one another. At least that's what researcher David H. Kelly says, the guy who published a paper on the subject back in 2016. David is a Harvard-educated archaeologist from the University of Calgary, meaning he really knows his stuff. But his paper was still controversial. He claims the two calendars indicate direct contact between the civilizations in Eurasia and those in Mesoamerica. This is about 1,000 years ago, and obviously it would turn everything we've been taught by mainstream archaeologists on its head. David believes it may have been the pre-Columbian societies that actually made it to Asia, since they did have quite a lust for exploring. It could be that they traveled all the way to Asia, where they stole the idea for the calendar from the Chinese, and then went back home and made their own. The similarities between the two calendars are many. For instance, the days are associated with elements like water and fire, along with animals. They even correspond frequently between the two systems. Days associated with the deer, dog, and monkey are exactly the same in the Mayan and Chinese calendars. Even more shocking is that the same day associated with the jaguar in the Mayan calendar is associated with the tiger in the Chinese calendar. And the same goes for the Maya representing one day with the crocodile and the Chinese representing the same day with the dragon. Coincidence? What do you think? The Great Henges. Nobody knows why ancient people built stone henges all over the world. Wherever ancient civilizations rose up, henges of huge rock boulders were constructed. Stonehenge just so happens to be the most famous, located in rural England. But the truth is that similar stone henges can be found all the way from the frigid mountains to hot deserts. We have the Carnac stones in Brittany, France, a grouping of over 3,000 stones that have been around since 4500 BC. There is the Rujum El Hiri in Israel, a megalithic monument of over 40,000 rocks. It was created around the year 3000 BC, and its purpose still remains unknown to archaeologists. Then there are some in Spain, other parts of Europe, and several countries of Africa. Then, of course, there are more stone circles all around the UK, the Drombeg stone circle in Ireland, the Rollright stones in England, and the Callanish stones in Scotland. This is just to name a few. The similarities between the different stone structures are uncanny, and yet nobody can come to a conclusion as to why our ancient ancestors all seem to have gotten the same idea to build the same thing at the same time. Missing noses. Anyone who's ever taken a trip to Egypt has probably wondered what the deal is with all the statues missing their noses. Is it a coincidence that so many great monuments lost their nose? It is and it isn't. If you take a good hard look at the Sphinx, you'll notice it too has its nose broken off. Statues at the Brooklyn Museum have missing noses, and in just about every Egyptian temple that still stands, there are statues with no noses. So what's the deal? The ancient Egyptians had a firm belief that when they built a sculpture to personify someone, that someone's soul could occupy the sculpture. When there was trouble in Egyptian society, usually having to do with a specific ruler, this ruler would sometimes break the noses off the statues of his rival or his rival's ancestors as a way to show strength. The destruction of the nose was almost always politically or religiously motivated. The nose in particular was smashed because the Egyptians believed it would cause the spirit residing in the statue to stop breathing. Later on, grave robbers did the same thing with the statues of the tombs or temples they were pillaging. They believed that by smashing the nose and stopping the statue from breathing, it wouldn't have the power to smite them down for stealing their stuff. When did humans start wearing clothes? If you've ever wondered why and when humans started wearing clothes, you're in for a treat. When did shame actually start? Archaeologists in Morocco have discovered the first evidence of early humans making clothing over 100,000 years ago. As it turns out, humans may have been wearing clothes for up to 120,000 years. The find didn't come in the form of Stone Age loincloths, though, but rather in the form of 62 tools made from bone. According to researchers, these bone tools found inside of a cave were used for processing and smoothing animal skins. If you're wondering where the clothes are, the truth is that organic materials tend to decay much faster than things like bone and stone. This is why organic materials like skin, leather, food, wood aren't found very often by archaeologists unless somehow mummified or preserved in ice. These tools, since they were clearly developed for processing animal skins, are the closest evidence we have to prehistoric clothing. The people living in the cave probably figured out that they could steal the fur from animals that they hunted and then use it for themselves to keep warm during the winter. They didn't have a fur coat, so they made one. According to Emily Hallett, the lead scientist working on the discovery, the animal furs that humans used to make the first clothing came from sand foxes, golden jackals, and wildcats. The strangest part is that they didn't use hides from cattle-like animals, instead only using them for meat. But what scientists haven't figured out is just why humans started wearing clothing and what the clothing looked like. There was no extreme weather back then in what is today Morocco, so they don't know if the clothing was meant to keep warm or just because Stone Age people started getting a little shy. The disappearing tomb. A team of archaeologists in Scotland discovered a pair of mysterious carved balls while excavating an ancient tomb on the Orkney Islands, with the tomb itself dating back to 5,500 years ago. It's called the disappearing tomb because erosion is slowly pulling it into the sea. Professor Vicky Cummings recently told Scottish News that the tomb was created by Neolithic people as part of a settlement they'd built in the area. They've been excavating it since 2017, but they are still not sure who was buried here. In fact, scientists aren't even sure what the carved stone balls were used for. They were uncovered along with some pieces of bone and pottery, but they don't quite fit in anywhere. They've hypothesized that the stone balls may have been used as weapons, or perhaps some sort of tool? Only about 500 of them have been found in Scotland, with just 20 found in Orkney. The tiny stone balls may have been used like heavy BBs in a sling, used as projectile weapons instead of bows and arrows. The prehistoric people would have put the balls in a slingshot-type device, then swung them around their head and threw them at their enemies. Priceless shipwreck. A priceless ancient shipwreck in the middle of the Namibian desert sounds quite strange. The last place you'd expect to find a shipwreck is outside of the ocean, and yet here we are. The ship dates back to 1533, when it set sail from Lisbon in Portugal. It was sailing past the coast of Namibia on its way to India before it suddenly went missing, and none of the crew were ever seen again. It was carrying a cargo of gold coins and other treasures, and after it vanished, nobody laid eyes on it until 2008, when miners working in the desert found the broken ship, along with its forgotten treasure worth an estimated $9 million. The boat was found when the miners drained an artificial lagoon in the middle of the desert. Somehow, the vessel had crashed into the shore, was buried by the desert sands, and then the sand slowly pushed it inland until it ended up in the miners' camp. And in case you're confused, the coastline where the ship was wrecked is one of the only ones in the world where the desert sand spills into the sea. It's not a rocky beach with sea cliffs. The desert literally ends at the ocean. So far, the shipwreck has been hailed as the most valuable ever found in Africa. Sure, there was a lot of gold discovered, but there were other fascinating historical relics as well, such as navigational instruments and pieces of pottery. They even found human bones that belong to the lost crew members. What is the oldest archaeological site in the world? It's time to learn about the oldest archaeological site in the world. And no, it's not Stonehenge or the pyramids in Egypt. Those don't even come close. To give you an example of how long humans have been around, our most distant ancestors appeared on Earth somewhere around 6 million years ago. The oldest archaeological site that contains evidence of this prehistoric world before civilization is in Africa. But there are actually two spots that hold the title of oldest archaeological site in the world. There is one place in Kenya and another in Ethiopia. The first site is called Lomekwi 3, and it was here that the bones of hominin creatures that lived 3.3 million years ago were found. Archaeologists also found ancient stone artifacts at the site, though these stone objects aren't much more than rocks shaped kind of like hammers. The hominins that lived here were Australopithecus afarensis, a kind of human animal that lived long before we did. Jason Lewis, the assistant director at the Turkana Basin Institute, told Life Science that Lomekwi 3 is the oldest known archaeological site anywhere on the planet. However, some scholars believe the oldest site is actually in Ethiopia, at a place called Gona. It was here where archaeologists uncovered ancient stone tools going back 2.6 million years. The reason some believe this is the oldest site is that there is no contention among scientists. At Lomekwi 3, a lot of experts have expressed doubts that the site dates back as far as the claims say. Either way, the oldest archaeological sites in the world date back to between 2.6 and 3.3 million years, containing the first stone tools known to humankind. The Vajra. The Vajra, according to Hindu mythology, is a weapon that possessed the strength of thunder, the indestructibility of a diamond, and the ability to open doors to other realms of existence. It is said that when two demons, Namuchi and Vritra, invaded Earth, they stole all the light and all of the water, leaving the land dry and dark. The god Indra tried to defeat them, but he didn't have a weapon that was strong enough. He then went to visit Vishnu, one of the most supreme gods in all of Hindu mythology. Vishnu ordered his divine carpenter to make the most powerful weapon, and this turned out to be the Vajra, which was able to make thunderclaps because it was so strong. Indra used the new weapon to electrocute the demons and return light and water to the planet. But what about the ancient god weapon in archaeological terms? Has anyone ever actually found the weapon? Unfortunately, the answer is no. Buddhism actually adapted the Vajra weapon into a symbol of peace, and so recreations of it have been found all throughout India and Asia where Buddhism is practiced. But nobody has ever found the physical weapon itself, capable of killing demons and weaponizing thunder. What would you do if you had a weapon this powerful? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe while you're at it. Peru's desert calendar. Archaeologists working in Peru had their minds blown when they discovered an ancient solar calendar carved into the sand of the desert. It's called the Chanquillo Observatory, and it's one of the oldest of its kind anywhere on the planet. It's definitely the oldest anywhere in North or South America. It's 2,300 years old, constructed out of 13 stone towers at the top of a hill. And while from the outside it may look like some kind of medieval fortification, it was actually designed to be a working calendar, a kind of prehistoric observatory. Local Peruvians had known about the site for a long time, but researchers didn't actually figure out it was a calendar until 2007, and then it was only designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site last summer. The ancient civilization who built the observatory/calendar used it to determine the position of the sun, predict the upcoming solstices and equinoxes, and to determine what day it was with startling precision. It helped them to plan harvests and hold yearly ceremonies. The biggest mystery right now is that scientists can't figure out who built the observatory. Because it's so ancient, and because the desert sands have eroded so much of the structure, there is very little to tell us more about the experts who built it. All they know is whoever it was came way before the Inca. Just wanted to give a big shout out to Rebecca Pelzinski and Alan McCoy. Thanks so much for spending time with us. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like these. Ancient Roman coin. An Israeli soldier stumbled upon something completely unexpected last year. The soldier is with the Israeli Defense Forces, also known as the IDF. He was in the middle of a training exercise when he noticed something shiny sticking out of the dirt. He dug the shiny object out of the soil and was shocked to realize he was holding an ancient Roman coin. After handing the artifact over to the Israel Antiquities Authority, they were able to determine that the coin was minted 1,800 years ago, probably in the year 158. On one side of the coin is an image of the Roman Emperor Antoninus Pius. The other side of the coin shows the Syrian moon god. Plus, there is an engraving on the coin that says, "Of the people of Geva Philippi." The engraving simply means that the coin came from the city of Geva Philippi. Back in the Roman days, it was common for cities to make their own coins and then mark them. Oldest human burial. In Africa, archaeologists have unearthed what they say could be one of the oldest human burials ever found. The discovery was made in the Penga ya Saidi cave of Kenya, located in the nation's tropical uplands, no more than 10 miles from the coast. Researchers found the ancient remains of a young child, only 3 years old. The child had been placed in a burial with their legs held against their chest, wrapped in a shroud, and with their head placed on a pillow. Considering the scientists managed to date the remains back 80,000 years, it's the oldest incident of a person being purposely buried in an actual grave anywhere in Africa. Believe it or not, it took archaeologists 4 long years to excavate the child's bones. It's because they were so delicate that when researchers began the excavations, some of the skeleton turned to dust immediately. It was a painstaking process that involved the excavators digging around the actual grave site so that the bones weren't disturbed. Unfortunately, they still haven't solved the mystery of the dead child. They don't know why the prehistoric people who lived here decided abruptly that they would start burying their dead. According to Professor Nicole Boivin, humans around this time started to develop a belief system around death, which is probably what led to the burial. Ancient Russian settlements. In Russia, researchers have uncovered a group of ancient settlements near the Viletma River that date back 10,000 years. These settlements were created by the Butovo culture, a group of hunter-gatherers who lived during the Middle Stone Age. Ancient activity in the region was first identified back in the 1970s, but this was the first time that a full-scale excavation has been conducted. Approximately 5 sites were investigated, with one of them containing actual dwellings. As far as the experts can figure out, these settlements may have been seasonal, meaning that people were returning to them each year to hunt and fish before going back to their nomadic lives. The archaeologists have uncovered flint artifacts, along with a massive amount of animal and fish bones. They have found arrowheads, fragments of axes, and even scrapers used for tearing off the hide of dead animals. Roman sarcophagi. Strange Roman sarcophagi have been discovered by Israeli archaeologists. The reason they are so strange is that they were covered in mystical symbols that archaeologists say were used to protect the souls of the dead as they journeyed into the afterlife. According to a statement from the Israel Antiquities Authority, the stone coffins have been dated back to around 200 BC. Amazingly, they were found during construction work at a safari park in the city of Tel Aviv. And to make things even stranger, an initial discovery was made 25 years ago during the construction of the parking lot at the safari park. But archaeologists weren't allowed to dig up any more of the business. Recently, thanks to a new construction project, archaeologists finally had the chance to uncover more of the ancient relics buried here. So far, only 2 sarcophagi have been found. The ancient coffins were made out of stone, probably for a husband and wife. They were identical in every way, even with the same mysterious markings on the lids of the sarcophagi. Plus, they were decorated with unique discs meant to be symbols of high status. In other words, the couple was probably rich before they died, or at least rich enough that they could afford such lavish burials. Archaeologists are still trying to work out why the coffins were found underneath the safari park. They haven't found evidence of a larger cemetery, and there are no other ruins to speak of. It could have been a private burial, but either way, the sarcophagi are now protected by the Israel National Treasures Department, with some experts believing there could be more mysterious relics hidden underneath the habitats of the giraffes and elephants living in the park. The mosasaurus. The mosasaurus was a ferocious beast that lived in the ancient oceans of the world during the Cretaceous period, about 145 million years ago. As far as scientists are concerned, the mosasaurus went extinct 65.5 million years ago. The big question is, could this prehistoric creature still exist somewhere in our ocean today? Most scientists say probably not. After all, some fisherman somewhere would have seen one. And what would it eat? But there are some who believe that there could still be a small group of mosasaurs living deep in our oceans. After all, 80% of the sea floor has never been mapped, explored, or even seen by humans, meaning there could be plenty of strange beasts, perhaps even mosasaurs lurking about, or at least a handful of them. But just what exactly is a mosasaurus? While dinosaurs were ruling the land, the mosasaurus was busy ruling the seas. It had a long tail, short paddle flippers, and a massive head with very scary teeth. It used these attributes to its advantage, swimming majestically through the water and eating just about anything it wanted. And even though it might look like a dinosaur, it's actually a type of marine reptile, more closely related to a garter snake than a dinosaur. It was also about the size of a megalodon. Nobody has actually spotted a mosasaurus in modern times, though some claim the Loch Ness Monster is just a mosasaurus that got left behind and has been living in the Scottish Loch for hundreds of years. Other mysterious large beasts spotted in the water around the world are also rumored to perhaps be a mosasaurus. The giant ground sloth. Something very strange happened 8,500 years ago. Suddenly, almost without warning and pretty much overnight, all of the largest mammals in the world vanished and have yet to come back. The Irish elk, the woolly mammoth, the saber-toothed tiger, and the giant ground sloth, just to name a few. All these huge beasts that had ruled the planet for thousands and millions of years were just gone, as if they had never existed at all. But it took a little longer for some to die than for others. For example, the woolly mammoth survived a few more centuries by hiding out on remote islands, while the giant ground sloth is believed to have lived an additional 5,000 years by retreating deep into the Amazon rainforest. To this day, scientists have no idea why this mass extinction happened, but they say it definitely had something to do with the ending of the Ice Age and a dramatic change in climate. Today, one of these huge extinct creatures may still actually be alive, the giant ground sloth. Scientists know that ground sloths once lived with humans, since tribal Amazonians have passed down legends of the mysterious monster for generations. But even in modern times, people speak of a huge creature over 7 feet tall, equipped with sharp claws, matted fur, and a deafening roar. The description matches the giant sloth exactly, which when alive would have actually looked nothing like the sloths we have today. These guys were around 13 feet tall and dug burrows with their enormous claws. Officially known as the Megatherium, to many people from the Amazon, it is the Mapinguari, a spooky creature that you can smell coming before you see it. It moved extremely slowly and managed to survive over 5 million years in South America, thanks to its size and intimidating techniques. The weird thing is that the creature has been spotted by multiple people in the Amazon jungle. Scientist David Oren says he is closer than ever to finding it. On various expeditions to the Amazon, several people reported seeing a creature more than 6 feet tall, weighing more than 400 pounds, with dark or reddish fur. David says that Indians, rubber tappers, and prospectors who live in the forest say the animal is shy, but can be fierce when confronted by people. It makes a strange, strong sound like jets flying extremely low, and leaves behind claw-shaped footprints. We don't know for sure, but the giant ground sloth could still be alive, clinging to existence in the most remote parts of the rainforest. The Megalodon. If the Megalodon really were alive today, you would probably never want to step foot in the ocean ever again. Considering the Megalodon could grow anywhere between 50 and 80 feet and was more dangerous than all the sharks in the ocean combined, it would make surfing or sailing pretty risky. But what if the Megalodon is still living in our oceans, just deep in the darkest part where nobody can see it? The ocean obviously isn't riddled with giant megalodons, but there could be a small group of them surviving in isolation. Here's what scientists have to say. According to Robert Bosnecker with the College of Charleston in South Carolina, the Megalodon may have gone extinct because of a creature that still lives today. When the great white shark showed up on our planet about 6 million years ago, they lived only in the Pacific Ocean. But after 2 million years, they had spread across the entire globe. The little cousin of the Megalodon was taking over the world, and the Megalodon ended up starving because the smaller, more agile, and more evolved great white shark was stealing its food. In a way, the Megalodon lives on today through the great white shark. The only way one of these prehistoric monsters is still physically alive is if they've retreated to the bottom of the ocean, where they hunt for food in the darkness. But as you know, there is not much food down there, and a megalodon would have to eat a lot. The short-faced bear. The giant short-faced bear was a prehistoric creature that roamed across North America until only a short time ago. Scientists say the huge bear had a face kind of like a bulldog and was very similar to other North American bears, but it died out 11,000 years ago. And while most mainstream scientists will agree that it's extinct, some believe it could still be roaming the vast wilderness in both North America and Russia. Some of the most convincing sightings actually came from Canada, where the giant short-faced bear has been spotted in the Northwest Territories, British Columbia, and even in Alberta. The bear is said to be so big that it can carry off a moose, though nobody has gotten a reliable picture of the creature. Then, in Russia, there have been sightings of what the locals call a caterpillar bear, far away in the Kamchatka Peninsula. A theory was even put forth by the Russian zoologist Nikolai K. Vereshchagin that the mysterious animal is the short-faced bear, perhaps migrated to Russia from the Bering Land Bridge between Siberia and North America over 10,000 years ago. Considering how remote the Siberian wasteland is, it wouldn't be that surprising to know a prehistoric bear is living somewhere out in the snow. The plesiosaur. A Japanese fishing boat may have accidentally discovered a dead prehistoric beast back in 1977. The creature in question is a plesiosaur, and it was found recently deceased and hauled up to the surface by the Japanese fishing trawler the Zuyo Maru. They had been trawling off the coast of New Zealand when they picked up the carcass at a depth of 1,000 feet. They couldn't believe their eyes when they brought the dead animal out of the water, dropped it onto the ship, and realized that they were staring at a monster. The creature was over 33 feet in length and weighed just about 4,000 pounds. None of the fishermen on board could identify the monstrosity, though some believed it was a rotting whale. Others thought it was a giant mythical turtle without a shell. In the end, profit came before curiosity, and the captain threw the rotten creature back into the sea. He didn't want the giant dead carcass spoiling the rest of the fish that they had already caught, and it was just too big. The only piece of evidence that this even happened is a photograph taken by one of the crew members before the carcass was thrown overboard. The fishermen showed the picture of the monster to company officials when they returned to Japan, and the story took off after that. Japanese scientists came forward to declare that the creature was definitely a plesiosaur, while other scientists denied it. There is no way to tell what the creature really was all these years later, but if it had been a plesiosaur, that would be kind of amazing, seeing as they went extinct over 80 million years ago. Just want to give a big shout out to FenNet. Thank you so much for supporting this channel and for your service. To all of our subscribers, thanks so much for watching. And if you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button to join the Origins Explained family. We have lots of new videos coming up. The little dodo. The dodo bird is extinct and not coming back. There is absolutely no doubt that on the island of Mauritius, every last dodo bird is dead. After the Dutch showed up on the island in the year 1600, the dodo bird quickly fell and became the poster child for extinct animals. It took them less than 80 years to hunt the bird into extinction and beyond, along with their dogs, cats, and rats, which didn't help at all. But here's something a lot of people don't know. There is still a kind of dodo bird alive today. It's called the little dodo, and it lives on in the island of Samoa. But it's dangerously close to following its larger relative into the void of no return. The little dodo lives only in a small patch of forest with less than 200 birds remaining. The little dodo has become so rare that for the last decade, nobody even saw one. It wasn't until last December that a juvenile dodo bird was finally spotted sitting in a tree, giving hope that they might not be dead just yet. According to researcher Rebecca Sterneman, the little dodo is able to use its wings to fly, unlike the extinct dodo bird, which was flightless. But they still look kind of like fat pigeons. Plus, the fact that they can fly hasn't really done much to save them from the brink of extinction. The Congo dinosaur. There might just be a dinosaur living in the Congo. Yes, we've all accepted by now that the dinosaurs died out over 65 million years before today. But what if the Great Extinction missed just one or two of them? In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Sightings of a great monster known locally as the Mokele Mbebe could be proof of a lingering dinosaur that missed the memo about going extinct. The creature is said to be about 35 feet in length, has brownish skin, and it has a very long and flexible neck, just like an apatosaurus. It also lives mostly in caves, though it has been sighted drinking at rivers and occasionally eating elephants and crocodiles. Unfortunately, nobody has managed to snap a photograph of the legendary Mokele Mbebe, putting it in the same category as the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot. It's just a myth until somebody can prove it really exists. There's no hard evidence yet, despite countless expeditions to hunt down and kill the monster. In 1980 and 81, famous monster hunter Roy McCall even went deep into the Lake Tele region of the Congo in search of the beast, but didn't find any evidence of its existence. He did, however, hear plenty of stories from the locals, who all claim to at one point or another have had an encounter with the mysterious dinosaur. Montana direwolf. Back in May 2018, an animal was shot dead on somebody's private property outside the town of Denton in Montana. The animal was unlike anything the local people had ever seen before. It almost looked like a hybrid wolf and a dog, or even a freakish werewolf. The animal was so bizarre that some believe it could be an actual direwolf, a creature that hasn't been seen since the Ice Age. The direwolf was an expert hunter that lived all across North America. They hunted bison, camels, and wild horses. But just around the end of the Ice Age, 13,000 years ago, the direwolf vanished. Most scientists agree its extinction was caused by a wave of other extinctions, with all the animals it was eating as food just kind of vanishing overnight. But could the direwolf really have survived all this time and made it to Montana of all places? Maybe, since the creature that was shot dead did look a lot like a prehistoric wolf. The only issue is that the creature was a bit small to be a direwolf. Though if the direwolf has been in hiding for the last 10,000 years or more, maybe it's evolved to be smaller and better at hiding. The Titanoboa. If the Titanoboa really is still alive today, we are all in big trouble. Millions of years ago, this was the largest snake anywhere on the planet and a literal nightmare. It could grow upwards of 40 feet long and was as thick as a doorway. Picture an anaconda, except about 3 times larger and capable of eating a car instead of just an alligator. The Titanoboa is considered extinct with no exceptions, dead for 6.6 million years. But just recently, theories have started circling that there could be a huge snake living in the Amazon jungle over 50 feet long. The theories aren't unfounded either, as residents living deep in the jungle have apparently witnessed a creature identical to the Titanoboa. The problem is that scientists can't prove or disprove that the massive killer snake still exists. The Amazon River is so big, so long, and so deep in places that it's impossible to locate anything if it's hiding in there. Even a monster like the Titanoboa could theoretically be hiding in the Amazon River without anyone ever finding it. The Great Woolly Mammoth. The Great Woolly Mammoth, for some bizarre reason, seems to be the favorite of all the extinct prehistoric creatures. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments below. There were claims coming out of Siberia in recent years that a small group of mammoths were caught living in the northern regions near the Arctic Circle. These sightings haven't been confirmed, but there is a slim possibility they are real. Mammoths could have continued living in small numbers in Siberia, maybe even without being noticed. But to tell you the truth, it doesn't really matter anymore. A company named Colossal is right now trying to put woolly mammoths back into the Siberian tundra. According to George Church, a biologist from Harvard Medical School, says they aren't going to stop until woolly mammoths are alive again. His laboratory recently received $15 million in funding to carry out experiments to bring the mammoth back to life. George has been leading a small team of researchers for nearly a decade with this ultimate goal in mind. They will edit elephant DNA and add mammoth genes until they manage to produce a baby elephant that looks exactly like a woolly mammoth. Then they'll let them run around the Siberian tundra to see if they can repopulate. Bull Rock. Bull Rock is an abandoned island located just 5.6 miles off the coast of County Cork, Ireland. But the first thing you might notice about Bull Rock is that it's covered in steep, rocky cliffs. In fact, It looks almost entirely inhospitable, but people actually used to live there, carving out their homes from the rock face, but who they were, no one knows. Living on a cliff face would not be easy. There is also a deserted lighthouse on the island, as well as a tunnel that allows boats to pass through. According to legend, the tunnel is a gateway to the underworld, and it's hard to pass through unless the weather is good. The lighthouse was built in 1889 as a replacement for a lighthouse that was located on nearby Calf Island before it was destroyed in a storm. From 1901 to 1991, up to 7 lighthouse operators lived on Bull Rock at any given time. They left when an automatic lighting system was installed and they were no longer needed. Bull Rock Island is open to visitors, but getting there is somewhat of a challenge. The only way to reach it is by boat, and there is no way for the boat to dock. But it's perfect for those who are looking for an enchanted experience in a seemingly forbidden land. Vanderbilt Tennis Club. As many as 750,000 commuters pass through New York City's iconic Grand Central Terminal every day. Many, if not most of them, are unaware that there is a hidden tennis facility and ski slope on the 3rd level, behind the building's famous vaulted windows. During the 1960s, a Hungarian immigrant named Geza A. Gazdag founded the Vanderbilt Athletic Club, which he named after the original station's builder, Cornelius Vanderbilt, millionaire. Gazdag had 2 clay tennis courts installed as well as a 65-foot ski slope, but the space was ultimately neglected, and by 1980, it had fallen into disrepair. Donald Trump actually took over the facility in 1984 and turned it into a high-end tennis club for those who could afford to shell out $155 per hour to play. Then, in 2009, it was closed down to make room for a Metro North employee lounge. A new ceiling was installed, creating a 4th floor where new tennis courts were built in 2011. Today, the club is open to the public, but it remains rather obscure. Rumor has it that even some of the employees at Grand Central are unaware of it or don't know exactly where it is. Devil's Bridge. You might expect something called the Devil's Bridge to look terrifying, but this arch structure, located in Kromlau, Germany, is set against the serene backdrop of lush foliage and is not scary at all. Built in Kromlauer Park during the mid-19th century, the bridge was purposely built so that its reflection forms a perfect circle in the water below. Like several other bridges throughout Europe, it got its name from the superstitious belief that Satan must have had a hand in its construction, since it appears almost miraculous. It's too beautiful to almost be real. But it was built by human hands using locally sourced stone after a local knight commissioned it in 1860. The bridge is more pleasing to the eye than it is practical since it's kind of delicate. It's near the Polish border, roughly a 2-hour drive from Berlin. Visitors are welcome, but for the sake of preservation, nobody is allowed to cross the Devil's Bridge. A royal waiting room. The Stazione Centrale, or the Central Station, is the main railway station in Milan, Italy. Over 300,000 people pass through it daily, with most paying no mind to a series of closed doors that they walk right past. Behind those doors is a lavish waiting room called the Royal Pavilion. It was added onto the station in 1926 at the urging of Italy's Minister of Communications, Costanzo Ciano. He thought it would be a good idea to create an elegant waiting space for the country's royal family, the Savoyas, who traveled by train to their countryside palace. Must be nice. Italy's monarchy ended immediately following World War II, but the Royal Pavilion still exists. It consists of 2 floors, the first of which is situated at ground level. It's filled with empty rooms that were once covered in fascist symbols, but the imagery was removed after the war. The upper floor features a series of different marble interiors, as well as royal emblems, high-end furniture, and a balcony overlooking the public square. There are swastikas engraved into the wood flooring as an embellishment meant to impress Hitler if he ever dropped by, although he never visited the station. And there is also a small bathroom where a large mirror conceals a ladder leading to an emergency escape route. The Royal Pavilion is hardly ever open to the public, so most people have never seen it firsthand, and most don't even know that it's there. Secret chambers at Drum Castle. In 2013, archaeologists working at Drum Castle in Aberdeenshire, Scotland, discovered a secret chamber. It was found on the first floor of the 700-year-old medieval structure, where it was hidden by 19th century bookshelves. The team already knew that there were several passages throughout the castle that had been blocked off when a library was built during the 1840s. This much was evident based on the fact that there are windows on the outside of the castle that couldn't be seen from the inside. But they didn't expect to find a perfectly preserved room that had sat untouched for at least 150 years. It still has its original doorway and toilet. Shortly after announcing the discovery, the archaeologists found another secret chamber. They initially suspected that it was the infamous space where Queen Mary Irvine hid her brother for 3 years after his defeat at the Battle of Culloden in 1746. According to rumors, she deceptively guided the British redcoats away from the castle while he was in there. But this turned out not to be the case. After sending in a remote video camera, it became clear that the chamber had a more ordinary use, perhaps as a butchery and/or a kitchen. King Robert the Bruce gifted Drum Castle to the Irvine family in 1323, and it remained in their possession until 1975, when it fell into the hands of the National Trust for Scotland. It is the oldest building under the organization's care. Haiku Stairs. There is a steep outdoor staircase nicknamed the Stairway to Heaven nestled in the mountains of the Hawaiian island of Oahu. Also known as the Haiku Stairs, this structure consists of 3,922 steps that once led to a top-secret U.S. Navy facility called the Haiku Radio Station, which was used for transmitting radio signals to Navy ships throughout the Pacific. After the naval base was decommissioned during the 1950s, it functioned as a base for Omega, the first ever global range radio navigation system. Around that time, the wooden steps that originally made up the Haiku Stairs were replaced with the metal steps and ramps that remain today. The staircase was once open to the public, but it attracted too many curious visitors for the government's comfort level, and in 1987, both the Haiku Stairs and the station were closed. In 2003, the city of Honolulu paid $875,000 to repair the stairs, with plans to reopen them to the public. But that never happened, and in 2018, the city made it clear that it never will due to safety concerns. Trespassing has been a constant problem. Officials estimate that thousands of people have carelessly walked right past the no trespassing signs and ignored warnings that they could face a $1,000 fine for going any further. The hike offers stunning views of the landscape and a nearby bay, and it's proven nearly impossible to keep people out. Sadly, the Haiku Stairs will not exist for much longer. Realizing that there's only one way to get the trespassing to stop, the fed-up Honolulu City Council voted to remove the staircase, and the mayor has given the green light. Would you want to see these stairs? Have you ever been there? Let me know in the comments below. Little Compton Street. London is filled with literal layers of history, one era built on top of another, that have accumulated over many centuries as the street level grew higher. In the middle of Charing Cross Road, there is a nondescript traffic island that offers a rare first-hand glimpse into the city's past. Beneath a metal grate, there is a wall with the words Little Compton Street embedded in tile. This is the name of the road that ran through the area at least as far back as the 1790s. Back then, the bustling area was home to one of London's most notorious slums. A public house called Coach and Horses once sat along Little Compton Street. It was demolished in 1886 to make room for the paving of Charing Cross Road. An office tower was eventually built where Little Compton Street once stood, and the former road was converted into a utility tunnel. But not everyone agrees that the signs beneath the road mark a buried street. A detective blog dedicated to solving mysteries like this, called Marmont Road, found evidence that the signs beneath the grate may have been put there to help utility workers navigate underground tunnels. For now, nobody can say for sure, but it's clear that the signs are old and that they represent just one of London's many buried historical features. The underground city of Nours. The underground city of Nours is a mysterious underground cave system in France. It's about 72 feet underground and has at least 300 chambers. It began life as a limestone quarry built by the Romans in the 2nd century AD, but when it was abandoned, ancient people used it as storage. The local people discovered the temperature was perfect for preserving goods inside the deep tunnels. During the Middle Ages, it became a place of refuge. As fighting and battles increased, the underground city was the perfect place to hide. At its peak, the underground city had a population of about 3,000 people. Over the years, people added wells, stables, bakeries, and chapels. They planned things extremely well, and the chimneys from the bakers' ovens and any other fires were routed through buildings above ground, so no one would have any clue as to what was going on below. Evidence also suggests that in the 9th century AD, Viking invaders let themselves into the underground settlement and just decided to stay there. The city remained in use until Europe became a little more stable and it was no longer needed. The secret city was then abandoned and not rediscovered until 1887, when a man renovating his house found a mysterious hole in his wall that led down into the city. A very similar story to the discovery of Derinkuyu in Turkey. Did you know about this city in France, or were you surprised? Let me know in the comments below. Eiffel Tower apartment. Shortly after the Eiffel Tower was completed in 1889, word leaked that its designer, civil engineer Gustave Eiffel, had a private apartment built for himself near the top of the structure. It's a small but cozy space, and it was originally decorated in a simple style that Eiffel favored. Situated nearly 1,000 feet in the air, the apartment was equipped with wooden cabinets, several desks, a kitchen, a bathroom with a separate toilet cubicle, and even a grand piano. It was surrounded by an open-air balcony. Eiffel wanted it to be appealing to scientists, so he filled an adjacent space with scientific equipment. Parisian socialites were green with envy when they heard about Eiffel's apartment. He reportedly received numerous offers from elites hoping to rent it from him, but he declined them all. He just wanted to make everybody jealous. After all, he had the cozy abode put there for his own use as a reflection space and for entertaining prestigious company like Thomas Edison. The apartment didn't even have a bedroom because it wasn't meant to be lived in. Today, it's open to the public for tours, offering a long-awaited glimpse into the high-demand space that the Eiffel Tower's designer awarded himself for his hard work. Devil's Hole Cave. Everyone's heard of the world-famous Niagara Falls, but many visitors completely miss the opportunity to visit the little-known Devil's Hole State Park. Nicknamed the Cave of the Evil Spirits, these limestone caves are carved into the side of the Niagara Gorge and can be found just down the road from the falls. Getting there requires a potentially dangerous climb down a stone staircase to the Niagara River. The Cave of the Evil Spirits has a long history of being haunted. While passing through in 1763, a British wagon train was attacked by 500 Seneca natives in what became known as the Devil's Hole Massacre. Afterward, the bodies of around 80 British soldiers were found floating in the river. The Senecas warned the British that if they trespassed again in the future, they would be plagued by tragedy and misfortune. According to modern-day superstition, anyone who removes a rock from the site will suffer in similar ways. Trafalgar Square Police Station. London's famous Trafalgar Square is home to the city's smallest police station, which is barely bigger than a phone booth. In fact, it's easy to walk past it without even noticing. It's cleverly hidden inside an ornamental light fitting, and the only clue to its presence is an inconspicuous door on the outside. Built in 1926, the tiny station was installed into the hollowed-out fixture as a watch post where police could keep an eye on protesters and demonstrators. It could hold up to 2 prisoners at a time if need be, but was primarily used for performing surveillance on unsuspecting bystanders. Inside, there was a direct telephone line to Scotland Yard in case the lone officer on patrol needed to call for backup. Anytime someone picked up the phone, the light on top of the station started flashing like a beacon to alert any nearby officers that there was trouble nearby. The first police station at Trafalgar Square was a temporary structure that was built after the Bloody Sunday riots of 1887, when 10,000 rioters took to the street to protest unemployment and coercion in Ireland. After World War I, plans were made to renovate the building, but the public objected to its presence, so the police got rid of it and replaced it with the less noticeable one-man command center. Thanks for watching! If you'd like to learn about more secret historical places, let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time! Bye!